It's the middle of June, which means it's radio dead silent in the world of college football. There's nothing going on, nothing positive, nothing negative. And so I have a lot of thoughts that are rambling around inside my head. I talked to the bosses and they said, you know what? Let them fly on the channel. So I'm starting a new series this week titled X Factor in 2024 for every SEC team. This could be a coach, a coordinator, a player that will determine the ultimate rise or downfall of their program this upcoming fall. And we're going to go in alphabetical order. So naturally, we're starting off with Alabama. Most people would think Jalen Milroe belongs here or Kalen DeBoer belongs here. No. In fact, it's actually neither of them. Kane Wommack is the person who is the X factor for success in Tuscaloosa for 2024. But what's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode. And of course, hit subscribe because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure that you follow us on all the social media channels at SEC Unfiltered, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure if you have a question too, you leave it down in the comment section. And to keep up with the #1 content surrounding your favorite conference, the #1 conference in all of college athletics, make sure you visit secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by RHOBACK. Use the promo code SECU for 20% off all polos, hoodies, joggers, and shorts. Promo code SECU when you visit RHOBACK.com for 20% off. Once upon a time, Nick Saban arrived in Tuscaloosa in 2007, and he completely changed the way that we view Alabama. They became a dynasty. They became the standard. They became the villains of college football, if you want. And every few years, he would make changes because of a coach decided to go get a job elsewhere, whether it be Jim McElwain or it was Doug Nussmeier or Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian. And he was willing to be adaptive for the offense. Every single time that there was a new change or a high-profile, prominent figure, he would capitalize and build around that player. Whether it was, of course, Greg McElroy or A.J. McCarron, or you throw in Blake Sims, Jay Coker, you want to throw Tua into the mix. Whatever the offense was, he was willing to adapt to the chimes. You know what never was adapted, whether it was Kirby or Jeremy Pruitt or Kevin Steele or insert defensive coordinator here? The defense. Nick Saban was in charge of that defense. That was his child. That was his prized possession. He treated that thing better than he has treated some people besides probably Miss Terry. That was his bread and butter because that's who he is, defensive-minded coach. Well, Nick Saban is gone. The Saban discount is gone. And enter Kane Wommack, who has been a part of Kalen DeBoer's life since both of them started off as coordinators at Indiana. And with it also enters a new era of defensive formations for the Crimson Tide. It's no longer a 3-4. Everyone wants to focus in on that. No, now it is a 4-2-5. They're going to be playing a lot of nickel. They're also going to be running some 3-3-5 formations at times. So there's a ton of change coming to Tuscaloosa this year where the linebackers, you no longer have 2 inside. You got to have some blitzers. You got to be able to have a couple of nickel defenders that can come up and step in and be blitzers at the point of attack. It's going to be transparently different than anything that we've seen in a while. And so because of that, that is why it is an X factor. Eventually, the offense is going to take flight. If you've ever paid attention to anything that has happened in Kalen DeBoer's life, you know that his offense will catch fire. It caught fire in Bloomington, Indiana. Then it caught fire in Fresno, California. It eventually led Michael Penix Jr. to a Heisman Trophy ceremony and to a national championship in Seattle, Washington. It will work in Tuscaloosa. The pieces are there. Jalen Milroe may not be an elite playmaker day one, but eventually he is going to be a reason why we are talking about the Crimson Tide back in the college football playoff scenario. Ryan Williams joins into the party. You're going to see what Jeremy Bernard has been waiting to do since his time in East Lansing. They have a good rushing attack. Their offensive line is great when it comes to the starters, including bringing over Parker Brailsford. You remember him? He was just a part of a Joe Moore, a winning offensive line. But at the same time, it may take a few games to catch yourself in the right direction. Alabama can't be afforded a few games to eventually hit their stride. That's the problem with the SEC. There's some good teams. There's a lot of good teams. That's why you see at least 6 with a win total, according to FanDuel, of over 9.5 victories. But with it, there comes that reason of concern. There's going to be a moment where they will eventually fall under the pressure. And so this is where Kane Wommack, who during his time at South Alabama had a top 20 ranked defense in back-to-back years nationally, will need to step up. There's players. There's some really good players. They went out and they did an extremely good job in the transfer portal. They added in the cornerback from USC earlier this offseason. He's talked about how the differences of Alabama's spring game compared to what is a normal practice at USC. Like, there's a lot of positivity going on when it comes to Alabama and the new moves made defensively. They also have some veterans like Malachi Moore coming back this year. Like he's a fifth-year veteran that didn't have to believe in the future of Alabama, especially with a whole turnover. He could have gone pro. He said, no, I want to be here one more year. I want to end this on the right note. They got some good linebackers, but it all has to mesh together this year. And again, these players that have come through Tuscaloosa, they've known one type of defense. One, the entire time. It has been a 3-4 because that was what Saban demanded. Well, it's no longer Saban's squad. Yeah, he'll have a voice inside the locker room in terms of him just being a part of the program, but it's no longer his. It's now DeBoer's show, and he's running it the way he sees fit. That includes the defense maybe having to step up a little bit earlier in the season. Maybe not against a team like Western Kentucky, but definitely against a Wisconsin team on the road for an 11 a.m. kick. Definitely at 6:30 when you're in the bright lights of Tuscaloosa at Bryant-Denny and Georgia comes walking on in. Those might be games where you're going to need the defense to bail you out. It's not exactly like Missouri last season. It's not exactly like Washington last season where there were multiple games where they won it by, one possession matchups. But there are going to be games where you look down the stretch at Tennessee, against Missouri, at LSU. Those are some tricky matchups. At Oklahoma, at Auburn, where you may end up seeing this be closer than what the odds are telling you. And the reason you win or lose is because if your defense came up with a critical stop in the third quarter, or they got an interception right before halftime and a momentous drive where Auburn was capitalizing going into Bryant-Denny Stadium, or Jackson Arnold was about ready to catch fire. That's what you're looking for from Kane Wommack's defense. Alabama has the offensive identity and the pieces in place to where, yes, immediately they could touch down this year, and then we're going into December, and number 8 appears on the board, or number 7 appears on the board, and Alabama is going to the college football playoff. They could win the SEC for all I know. They also could be 9-3 or 8-4, and in large part it's because if they lose a couple of games because of the defense didn't get a good stop, because of the offense wasn't up to page when they needed to be, and the defense couldn't bail them out of trouble. It could be a lot of questions. This is not an Alabama of what we know. It could be, but there still is a lot of wonder, what ifs, who knows? And because of that, this is where Kane Wommack is going to have to step up. He was paid to go be a coordinator that is getting the likes of what you're going to see for some head coaches at the Group of 5 level. He is going to earn the right to eventually become that next name that joins other coaches in the past. Like, it'll be better than Sean Lewis, who took the job at San Diego State this offseason. Kane Wommack, if he does a good job at Alabama, is going to get offers from the ACC, from some SEC schools, from some Big 12 schools. He'll have his pick of the litter. But he also is going to have to meet the criteria. Alabama may be a really, really good team in 2024. They may be an elite team in 2024 if the offense hits its stride more than advertised. But if it doesn't, at least at first, this is where your defense is going to have to make a stance. We've seen Alabama before trust its defense. In 2024, to begin the year, and probably in some of the more marquee matchups, the ones where this may determine seeding in the playoff, the defense is going to have to be the X factor. And that relies heavily on what Kane Wommack decides to scheme up. But let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think is the X factor for the Crimson Tide in 2024? Is it Kane Wommack? Is it a certain defensive player? Is it Jalen Milroe? Because if I get the reasoning behind it, but I'm not entirely going to buy into it. Make sure that also you like, rate, review, subscribe to the channel, hit the ring notification. That way you don't miss an episode of SECU. Download the podcast, leave a 1-star review. If you hate this type of content, leave a 5-star review because you love this type of content. And we know you love this type of content. Make sure that you follow us on all the social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. And to keep up with the #1 conference in all college athletics, the #1 conference of all time, visit SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, Crimson Tide fans and SEC faithful everywhere, Later.